Okay, the clutch has been slipping real bad in the Corvette, so it's time to put a new clutch kit in it. I got a clutch kit from Jegs. It's Hayes 85-101. The clutch kit comes with a new pressure plate and a new friction disc and the alignment tool, which is plastic, simulates the input shaft of the transmission. Your throwout bearing. You get your clutch pedal, the clutch fork pushes against this throwout bearing, and that's what releases the spring pressure there, holding everything together. One big sandwich with the spring pressure and the pressure plate holding the friction disc against your flywheel, and stainless knee bolts there to hold the pressure plate to the flywheel. And the best thing about this kit is it's a quality kit. And if you order from Jegs or from Summit or any of the performance places and you get even the basic street performance clutch kit, you're going to get that, which you don't always see now in clutch kit. The car's up in the air, and the next thing I want to do is disconnect the drive shaft from the transmission. So there's the orange oil pan, and there's orange bell housing, and there's the 4-speed manual transmission, and you keep going back, and there's the front U-joint there, and that's the drive shaft. And what I've got set up here is I've got a screwdriver that's kind of going up inside there just to keep it from spinning. So I've got the transmission in neutral, and the rear end's up in the air, so since the tires aren't on the ground, there's really nothing to keep the drive shaft from spinning. So screwdriver's in there to keep it from spinning. I'm going to want to spin it, take the screwdriver out, move it to a different nut to get all 4 of these nuts off. And the nuts are right there, and you can see I've got a 1/2-inch box end on that. 4 nuts, 4 lock washers, and 2 U-bolts have been removed that were holding the drive shaft's U-joint to the front yoke that splines into the rear of the transmission. And now that that's all apart, what I can do is I can put the screwdriver back in there, and I can pry the yoke forward, which will let the drive shaft drop down. And when I do that, I want to hold the caps. See, I've got the caps at the 3 and 9 o'clock positions there. I don't want the cap down here at the 6 o'clock position, because I don't want that cap to fall off. The transmission yoke is right there. You can slide that out, and it looks like that. And that's that. Here's the shifter linkage going to the transmission, and you can disconnect it right here, where I've got this 1/2-inch box end on there, and this one right there, and right there. So that's the 3 points that when you're shifting your 4-speed transmission, that's what's being affected right there. So when you break torque on these, it's you're turning it this way. So when you first break torque on these nuts, you're probably going to move the lever. So once you got the nut loose, then just put the lever back where it was. It was right there. Next thing I want to get is this speedometer cable right here, and it goes to the tail shaft of the transmission, but it's kind of buried behind the transmission mount right here. So you got 2 engine mounts and you got 1 transmission mount, and that's how your engine and transmission are 3-pointed, securely into the frame of the car. So here's the problem. I can't just take this transmission mount off, because half the weight of the engine and all the weight of the transmission is being held by that mount. So I'll put a jacker in the transmission to hold the weight before I take this off. And before I let the jack down, I want to make sure that I got something underneath the oil pan of the engine to support it. I got an old toolbox with some wood on top of it, right underneath the oil pan. So that's going to support the rear of the engine. The motor mounts are going to support the front of the engine. And I've got my jack underneath the transmission with just a little bit of pressure there. So the jack's holding the transmission up just a little bit. So now I can safely remove the transmission mount. Going from left to right, starting right here. Half-inch box end on that one, loosen that right up. And notice the ground strap here, and there's also a ground strap on the other one. So I'm taking off this exhaust clamp here. It's a hanger, you know, for the dual exhaust. And then, you know, there's the ground strap there we talked about, and the ground strap there, and the half-inch nuts there, and one there, and one there, and one there. In the middle, where the hanger part is, the little rubber hanger portion, there's a 9/16 that you got to get with the ratchet set up. And you see I got my ratchet set up on the 9/16 nut, which is right up in there, and then there's another one right up on the other side. But as you spin the nut, it spins the head of the bolt. So you got to get a 9/16 box end, which I know you can see right there. There's the open inside, and I got the box end up there. Once the exhaust hanger is down, you've just got 2 bolts here, 1, 2, and then 1 long bolt right here that goes right through this 9/16. So a 9/16 socket on one side, 9/16 box end on the other side. Take that one all the way out of there, and then this just comes down like this, and that's your bracket. And then this is your actual transmission mount with the rubber in there. And then that's what goes bad. When your motor mounts go bad or your transmission mounts go bad, it's the rubber that breaks loose. But that feels really solid. 2 5/8 bolts, and I took the transmission mount off, and then using channel locks I broke torque on the speedometer cable just gently, so now the speedometer cable can come off. Alright, that's out of there. Right at the very back of the transmission, right by the output shaft of the transmission, where the drive shaft yoke goes in, you've got the bolts that hold the shifter bracket to the tail housing. Okay, so shifter knob off and this plate removed, and that's what we're left with there, and we'll just go back underneath and grab it. That was a little bit of work. Alright, so here's this. Cleaned it all up before we put it back on. But there's the shifter assembly.